when we were speaking about Arsenal, we saw their defeats. Obviously, that was a poor one at Newcastle, and then they lost in midweek against Inter. They've dropped silly points. They drew at home against Brighton due to a lack of discipline. What's really changed? Is it simply Odegaard isn't there, albeit he's now back in training and could be involved this weekend in some stage? Is it a case of now Odegaard's back, everything's okay for Arsenal, or do the same problems rear their ugly heads? They don't score enough for the chances they create, Janusz?
It's both. I mean, think about it. Last year, I mean, of all the teams, they were relatively healthy. I mean, almost everybody played all the time. But yet, we've always said that some of the issues, I said it last year, I said it this year, even before, is that, the squad is not deep enough. And we see it now, because even though they dealt with the loss of Odegaard relatively well, you have to say, maybe up until recently, he just came back, played a few minutes. Obviously, this team is not the same without him. Saka is going to be much better the moment he steps on the field. So that's a massive bonus. But when you look at it, because of little injuries, you look at, Saliba's suspension. You look at, Calafiori, who came in and impressed right away. He's been out. I'm trying to think, who else is there? Timber's been in and out. Declan Rice been injured as of late, right? So when you look at that, that shows you that lack of depth in the squad in terms of quality, and they can't change that. And having to play in Champions League and Premier League, of course, with that is not easy. And combined with that, the continuous problem at number 9, because, even though it's been better with Kai Havertz, he is not number 9. He will never be number 9. If you're facing Arsenal, Kai Havertz is not the sort of player that's going to make you go, wow, right? And there's been so much talk about that number 9. If you look at Gyökeres, look what he's doing for Sporting against Manchester City recently, right? So a team that Arsenal has to face. And if you look at somebody like Osimhen at Galatasaray, look at that. I know there's a lot of money. I know it's not all that easy, but they haven't addressed that. And to me, perception sometimes is everything. And when I look at some of these games, and there are plenty of them where Kai Havertz doesn't look right. Trossard is never going to be that player that playing kind of 2. Sometimes Trossard is the number 9. It's just not going to happen. Trossard is great when he comes off the bench, occasionally to start. Martinelli, for me, still very young, but I don't know if he's developing as fast as everybody could see. So you have over-reliance on Bukayo Saka, and then with all the players missing significant number of games, key games, that's why we are where we are. Where, as I said, they lose this game to Chelsea, and I don't see a way back. You can do it against one team, but you can't do it against Liverpool and Manchester City with a 10 points loss.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If Liverpool win at home against your boys, LME, and Arsenal lose at Chelsea, 10 points. I mean, we're not talking about trying to win the title there. We're talking about trying to catch the teams above you to maybe get into the top 4 at this stage. Depending on what happens this weekend, if Arsenal lose, is it still a 3-horse race between Manchester City, Liverpool, and Arsenal as far as not so much the title is concerned, but the top 3 is concerned? Or is this basically, from a Chelsea perspective, the chance to be top dogs in London?
Yeah, I mean, let's focus on each side very quickly, right? Chelsea, 4th right now. Under Enzo Maresca and this project, that's great. It's fantastic. I mean, they didn't look that great creatively against Manchester United, but it was a good result that helps them be in 4th in goal difference. Arsenal, I'm going to be honest, since the Southampton win, which was, back in October, more than a month ago, if we analyze every game from there for Arsenal, it hasn't been that great. They lost to Bournemouth, a narrow win in the Champions League. Then the draw against Liverpool, which I think showed a little bit of lack of character. Okay, they beat Preston, but I'm not counting that in the League's Cup. Followed by 2 straight losses against Newcastle United and Inter. And we can talk about the absences and we can talk about the over-reliance on Bukayo Saka, but if you want to win the Premier League, you're just going to have to do better than that. And yes, to your point, if Liverpool beat Aston Villa, that gap, and then Chelsea beat Arsenal even don't win, that gap is pretty substantial. And that's an issue. And I just want to go to one thing that Janusz said. This is something we've been talking about forever. I know that I've said it over and over again. Arsenal have always needed a clinical striker. Kai Havertz is not it. He has 4 goals. That's not enough. Because a clinical striker is not just good for the makeup of the team, but he also helps you when things are not going your way. And they have not resolved that for a long time. So now that Edu is gone, there needs to be a new vision come January and in the future to help them. But if you want to win the Premier League, which is what Arsenal fans want, right? You want to win the Premier League, you need a clinical striker to help you along the way, because otherwise it's not going to happen. And that continues to be an issue. And all of those matches that I just talked about since the Southampton win, I haven't been impressed. So that's a major problem. So if they lose to Chelsea, then yeah, I mean, forget it. Your biggest hope right now is to get Champions League once again, because you're not winning the Premier League title.
Okay, let's put some context into this. We're going to pause for a minute, and we're going to allow Arsenal to get up, because they've been down and we've been kicking them for about 5 minutes here. First game of the season, 2018-2019. Marcus Alonso scored with 9 minutes to go. Chelsea beat Arsenal 3-2. That was the last time Chelsea won at home to Arsenal in the Premier League. The Gunners are unbeaten in the last 6. They won 5-0. So now that Arsenal are back on their feet and we've stopped kicking them while they're down, Janusz, this is a good opponent for Arsenal. Historically, what will happen this weekend? Does history count?
No, because look, I mean, what Chelsea are doing, none of us has foreseen it. There isn't one probably pundit that could honestly say that they saw Chelsea doing what they're doing, right? They're playing with house money. There's no pressure on them other than the one that they put themselves under, right? I mean, yes, if they continue to win, we're going to talk about that. Is there a possibility this or that? But they have time for that because of what I've said before. There's just this is a young team under the right manager finally, who's implementing the way of play. All these young players, all this chaos and disaster that we've called Chelsea on and off the pitch is coming good, and none of us have seen it. None of us, right? So I look at this game and Chelsea not just figuring out the way they play, but they're relatively solid in the back. I think Maresca has made some tough decisions. One that's very important because you go in for strength and power and protection of the back four by Moises Caicedo, who we laughed at, right, because of the price tag, and he hasn't been good. But this season he's been excellent. We're seeing the Caicedo with the strength and power who can all pretty much by himself control that midfield sometimes, but you have Lavia instead of Enzo Fernandez. And that is a massive decision. Speaking of amount of money paid, Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez. You have Nicholas Jackson, all of a sudden is clinical, and I still till this day don't think that he is. I've been saying that for me, Christopher Nkunku is more clinical. I know he scored the other day, a couple goals, but he's sitting on the bench as well. So I look at this Chelsea team that's going to go into this Arsenal team, in my opinion, with zero pressure from fans and from pundits like us.
Mm-hmm. Nico Jackson's 1 yellow card away from suspension, by the way. It would be a 1-game ban. Those yellow cards are starting to pick up and kick in for some of the players in the Premier League. So, Elemi, as we wrap this up, back in April, Arsenal won by 5-0. There was a huge gulf in class between the two sides. Is there even a difference between the sides now? That gulf isn't there anymore. But what's the difference, if any, between the two sides going into this one?
Well, like Janusz said, I think Enzo Maresca's project is incredibly, surprisingly important. They're night and day if you compare to what they were doing in April. I think they're more together collectively, fiercely collected as well. I mean, the fact that they're fourth is amazing. From an Arsenal side, if they're fully healthy, then hopefully they can jump back to it. I think historically speaking, like you mentioned, they can maybe come with that, some kind of confidence. I'm going to wait and see what happens with Cole Palmer, right? Because he didn't train yesterday. Enzo Maresca said in his press conference that he's going to wait and see what happens today. Obviously, after that foul from Licha Martinez against Manchester United, he's key. And Janusz mentioned Nkunku, he's Chelsea's top scorer this season. So, they have weapons. I've been very impressed with Pedro Neto as well. I think there's a lot of justifyingly good responses that you can give to Enzo Maresca for what he's doing with Chelsea. So they're different from what you're seeing in April. This is going to be a different game. Now, I'm intrigued to see how Arsenal wake up from this one, but I'll be boring here. I know you're not asking me a prediction, but I think it'll be a draw because they'll both cancel each other out. I hope an entertaining one, but I'll see it as a draw.
And just talking about this game, you look at Chelsea that are relatively healthy, and you look at Arsenal. There's a possibility that they're going to be with their strongest lineup, right? I mean, it's possible, but there's also possibility right now. You talking about Havertz, Merino, Rice, Odegaard, still questionable, right? Odegaard came in, but is he going to be risky in a game like Chelsea from the beginning? Is he ready? I'm not so sure. As I've said, there's some doubts there. So depending also on which Arsenal team shows up. So a lot of question marks there for Arsenal ahead of this Chelsea game.
And Rice has a broken toe.
Right. So that's what I mean. I mean, they could be playing, as we've read some reports, but
not fully fit.
That some of these players will not be playing, which against this healthy Chelsea team that's really on a tear for the most part, playing away from home, it's not going to be an easy task. I mean, Arsenal will gladly take a draw. Your draw, LME here.
Janusz, what do you reckon?
Oh, I really, I'll go with Chelsea here. Just a gut feeling. Normally I go for Arsenal. I think they're still a better team, but given what I don't know yet, if you ask me, I'm going with Chelsea.
And after losing on the opening day of the season against Man City and then losing in October at Anfield, that would certainly get rid of a few question marks from people asking if Chelsea can compete against the best in the Premier League. Good one. Chelsea against Arsenal. Full reaction right here at ESPN FC. Whatever you're doing this weekend, enjoy your football. Whatever you're watching, hopefully your team wins. We will be back soon for LME. For Janusz, I'm Mark Donaldson. We're away to film Men in Black, the next sequel.